What's going on, everybody? I'm Jerry, and today I'm going to be doing my Week 6 power rankings for the NFL. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get right into it. See the graphic there? Not great. I'm going to improve on it week by week. But to start off, 32 Carolina Panthers. Tough not to put them there at 0-5 right now, the last team 0-5. I was hesitant to put them there, though, because they have been going up against some better teams. And if you look at their per game stats, we got 25 points per game on offense, 23 yards per game, and then 28 and 13 on defense. So they weren't really ranked too bad. You know, we got Bryce Young just getting mutilated by the Lions. Yeah, it was just kind of the story of the game yesterday. But the Panthers were able to put up a fight against the Lions, and that's why I was hesitant to put them at 32. You know, I think they could be like maybe 31 or even 30, just with how horrible the other teams have looked. They really haven't looked like as much of a dumpster fire as the other teams, only moving back one spot to 32. And then the Giants, the biggest dumpster fire in my opinion. You know, you look at the per game, 31 points per game, 32 yards per game. You see Dable is pissed over there next to me. He's pissed. So it's been an absolute dumpster fire of a franchise this season so far. And Saquon's been out. Andrew Thomas, their best tackle's out. Danny Dimes is probably going to be out for a little bit now. So it would be very easy to put this team at 31. But being 1-4, I still slated them in at 31. I very well could be 32. Moving back one spot. Patriots I put back here just because after back-to-back weeks, the look on Bill Belichick's face must replicate the most Patriots fans. Like, what the fuck's been going on? Because they haven't been able to score a touchdown, and they haven't been able to stop anybody. The defense yards per game really doesn't show it, but with all the turnovers that Mac Jones can produce, it has made it very difficult for them to win games. You can see last in points per game on offense. So when you're last in points per game, it's tough. It's tough to not be in the bottom 3 or 4. Which is where the New England Patriots are, moving back 4 spots. I didn't think it hurt them very much last week, getting dominated. But this week, just kind of put it over the top 2 weeks in a row. Can't let that happen. Patriots end up at 30. Next, we have the Denver Broncos, who have also been a bit of a dumpster fire. They've been a lot closer and been in games at least. And you got the win over the Bears last week, and that's why they end up at 29 ahead of the Patriots. You also look at, on offense, 10th in points per game, 16th in yards per game. Their defense has just been a sieve. And you can see there that Sean Payton does not look very happy with Russ. So costly fumble towards the end of the game would have been a very easy situation where it's a very winnable game. And that's why I put them at 29. I think they don't deserve to be in last, although the team has been much of a dumpster fire so far. Broncos get 29. 28 is the Chicago Bears, moving up 4 spots. One of the biggest movers this week, with their huge win over the Commanders, winning 40-20. You can see their offense has been humming, 12th in points per game, 14th in yards per game. Defense still needs to figure out how to get it together. They have the defensive coach. They have a lot of new guys, at least to the team on defense. So I think that's why the hopes are higher. Did I put that in the right order? Yeah, 28. Good for me. Nice job, Jerry. We got the 1-2 punch down there. Bears have been looking good. That's why I put them to move up 4 spots. It would have been difficult to move them up more than that, especially factoring in the first 4 weeks with all the losses. They really haven't started doing well until they played the worst defense in the league in the Broncos. And then what's been a pretty good defense, at least in the defensive line department for the Commanders, but Bears end up at 28th. Cardinals are next. I couldn't put the Bears ahead of the Cardinals yet just because of how much they've been in games. Similar to where I think I might have the Panthers too low. I think that I could have the Cardinals too low. You look at 15th and 19th on offense, 27th and 26th on defense. It's not horrible. And I think the Cardinals have exceeded expectations just because they aren't very clearly the worst team in the league, which is what I think most people were expecting, and that is why the Cardinals slot in at 27. The Minnesota Vikings move back a spot. Offense has been pretty good, but they make a lot of costly mistakes. That's why their offensive rankings are so high, is they fumble the ball like no other, and they make mistakes when it counts. and when they need to not make mistakes. And then their defense hasn't played very well, although because of the time of possession that the offense has had, their defense, their stats at least, don't look as bad. But the Vikings still one of the bottom tier teams, especially after losing Justin Jefferson. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to get a win against the Bears this Sunday. So Vikings come in at 26, moving back a spot. The Raiders move up a couple spots. I didn't really think it was fair to move them up 3 spots, but I feel like when a team loses, they have to move back in the power rankings. When a team wins, they have to move up. And it just, with how the Raiders played, they're 2-3. You look at the last teams, they're all 1-4. So it only seemed right that the Raiders, move up the spots that they did. Not doing good on offense, 29th in offense yards per game and points per game. And then defense appears better, but they've really just been in close, low-scoring games so far this season. But they are 2-3, lowest 2-3 team on the board. So ending up at 25, moving up 3 spots. And then next we have the Commanders, who you very easily could put after the Raiders. Mainly, behind them. But I think their strong offensive play is kind of what's been keeping them in the games. They still move back a spot. Second 2-3 team, you see Sam Howell there. He's been slinging the rock, 388 passing yards this week, 37 for 51, I believe. So Sam Howell doesn't necessarily appear to be part of the problem. It's really just the DBs and the lack of the running game over there. So Commanders end up at 24. Jets move up a spot, getting the win. Big-time win in Denver. Again, haven't really looked at Denver as being close. I couldn't move the Jets up more than a spot, though, because of how close the game was. If Russ didn't fumble at the end, that very well could have been an overtime game or even a Broncos win. And against a team as bad as the Jets, or against a team as bad as the Broncos, you can't give the Jets a whole lot of credit. You don't want to get overexcited about Zach Wilson having a good game. Kind of the same way with Fields, I was obviously happy being a Bears fan that Fields had a good week against the Broncos, but can't overreact about that stuff. So Breece Hall just ran all over the Broncos and had a good game. So they do deserve to move up 1 spot, but not much. Packers move back quite a lot. Again, if I could just tell you how much I'd want the teams to move, I don't think the Packers were deserving of moving back 3 spots. I don't think that the Raiders were deserving of moving up 3 spots. But you kind of look at the teams around them, you look at the records, you look at how they've been playing, and just because of how the other teams were, the other teams that got wins, the other teams that got losses, that's kind of how they slot. I don't think the Packers are that bad, but once you see these teams ahead of them, you might understand a little bit more of why. Statistically, Packers looking good. Jordan Love throws 3 interceptions in the last game and really made himself look bad. And, people were talking, it's amazing how they went from Favre to Rodgers to Love. Well, he didn't really look very exciting this week. So, unfortunately for him, we end up having to move him back 3 spots at 22. Next is the Steelers. We got TJ Watt down in the corner. They get a win, so they have to move up. Honestly, would have liked to move them up more. But when you look at the next couple teams, you can't really move them up much more. Especially just off of 1 win in a game where really the Ravens just made mistakes to lose the game. And obviously Pittsburgh had to be a part of, helping make those happen. But Pittsburgh moves up 1 spot, still have a lot of problems on offense. And this is why I just don't think the Steelers can pass the Bengals yet. I think the Bengals have had a lot of problems, but I still think they're a great team that's just been suffering some problems. So that's why the Bengals only move up the 1 spot for their win. They barely beat the Cardinals, kind of a similar situation or scenario, new word that I just came up with, to the Ravens-Steelers game where, Steelers really could have lost that game. Ravens could have won. Same thing with the Jets-Broncos, very well could have been a Broncos win. This one could have been a Cardinals win. If you don't have that Dobbs interception at the end, could be a tie game, could be a Cardinals win. But Bengals get the win. They move up a spot into 20. Next we have the Colts, who also get a win, end up 3-2. Lowest 3-2 team on the list, I believe. Yeah, lowest 3-2 team just because Zach Moss just decided to run all over the Tennessee Titans. You can see their offense with Anthony Richardson being on and off, you don't have Jonathan Taylor. They're 11th in points per game and 12th in yards per game. So obviously Shane Steichen knows what he's doing over there and makes the team deserving of the 19th spot. Defense still needs some help, but their offense has been finding ways to win games. And that's all it takes. So the Colts move up a spot. Excuse me. Next, Chargers. Still have not been good on defense. We had a bye week. I don't like moving a team that has a bye week. I had them at 18 last week, left them at 18 because I don't feel like it's deserving to move. There might be a scenario where one team shows up and is really good or is really bad to move past that spot, and then that would result in the team moving. But because the Chargers had a bye week, I just left them where they're at. They stay at 18. Next, we have the Tennessee Titans, who lose a game. They deserve to move back. That's kind of what happened here. Probably shouldn't have lost that game to the Colts. I mentioned in my recap video that the Titans lost the game to the Colts, and the Colts won in a way that the Titans would typically win, where you just kind of have your running back taking all the carries and quarterback throws when he needs to. Titans couldn't even take them down, which, again, I don't think of the Colts very highly. So you'd think why, the Colts just beat the Titans. Why do you have the Colts behind? I think the Titans still have the more well-rounded team. You're kind of missing there at quarterback, but I think the dominant run game of Derrick Henry, who, again, hasn't been that dominant this year, I think that kind of overarches it for me. Overarches it? Yeah, overarches it. And Titans just moved back the one spot, but they do move back with a loss. Next up, the Houston Texans, who really get beat kind of bad here with moving back 3 spots. Again, I don't know if they're really deserving of it, especially if you look, 12th in points per game, 11th in yards, 11th in points per game on defense, 18th in yards per game. How does that average out to 16, Jerry? Well, for me, it's because of these next teams that are coming up here. We had a couple teams with a bye week. I already mentioned that I don't like to move teams with a bye week, and this might have been a situation where I could have, slide a team back just to make room, but I still don't think we know what the Texans are. C.J. Stroud has played good, and the defense has been surprisingly good for how early on the system is and, some of the younger players. So I think 16 right in the middle makes sense because this is still a lot higher than our expectations were for the Texans this year, but it's not too low because they are playing good football. And at 2-3, the Texans are at 16, right in the middle. Next up, we have the Falcons, who got a nice win this week. Desmond Ridder finally showed out. I had been mentioning in previous weeks that really the only way they can win games is when Bijan and Algier are having a successful game on the ground, and Ridder's able to just kind of dink and dunk and make little throws when he needs to. And Ridder really was the reason they won that game. Bijan and Algier did not have a great game, and Ridder won the game for them. So that's why they deserve to move up 2 spots for me, is because they showed a side that I really wasn't expecting to see. So the Falcons move to 3-2 and move up 2 spots to 15. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, I mentioned I don't like to move teams when they have a bye week. Not much else to tell. I think they're very overrated at 3-1. And I think, teams, I still don't think they're going to win their division. I think the Saints or the Falcons kind of have that on lock. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have played against some bad teams. They played against the Broncos. They played against the Bears. And did they play the Panthers too? Played some bad teams, got some wins. Doesn't really count very. They play the Vikings. Beat the Vikings too. So it's like didn't really play any good teams. Maybe it was just Bears and Vikings. Haven't played great teams. End up at being 3-1. Had a bye week, so they're not going to move. They stay at 14. Next up, we have the Rams, who move back 3 spots for me, mainly because I was very high on the Rams, especially I was kind of overwhelmed with how well they were doing with just Puka Nacua, no Cooper Kupp. So it made sense to me that they should be higher up on the list as they were. And losing to the Eagles, you might say that it's not worth it, or it's not realistic for them to move back 3 spots because they still played a very close game and a very competitive game against a great football team in the Eagles. But, you kind of look at the stats, and 13 seems like the right home. You'll see these next couple teams with bye weeks that kind of made it difficult for me to not move them back to here. So we'll move on to the next one. We had the Saints, who had to move up a spot. So that, again, pushes the Rams back a spot. Saints on defense have been phenomenal. Alvin Kamara comes back strong. Saints move to 3-2. And Offense still leaving a little bit to be desired, especially when you have Carr in, you have Michael Thomas, you have Chris Olave, so there's a lot of talent over there. Would like to see them doing better, and I think they could move up this rankings, but for right now they stay at 12, moving up one spot from last week. And then the Seahawks was the other team I mentioned. I don't really like to move the bye week teams back, so that's another reason the Rams ended up moving back 3 spots. I thought, okay, they lost, they have to move behind the Rams. And it's like, okay, well, the Saints have to move up, so they have to move back again. Again, I think Rams, realistically, maybe could have put the Buccaneers moved back a slot, or maybe I could have moved the Saints up, or whatever way to do it to where the Rams don't move back as far. But the Seahawks didn't play a game. They end up staying at 11. Number 10, Jacksonville Jaguars, getting a big win over the Bills. I did only move them up the one spot. You'll see the teams that I have ahead of them. You'll see another situation where I think maybe I could have moved the next team back a spot and put the Jaguars to 9, but I'll explain that in a minute. You see Travis Etienne in the corner there. He absolutely went off. Jacksonville, as far as stats, everything, they played very well. Trevor Lawrence did have the 3 fumbles, but the way their team overall played so well, they ended up still getting the win 25-20 against the Bills. And a win over the Bills, in my book, is definitely the reason to move up and move into the top 10. So I have the Browns here. Again, I might be a little too high on the Browns. I think they've just been dealing with injuries. I kind of am projecting out a little bit, maybe more than I should be this year. They have Chubb out. Deshaun Watson hasn't been playing. They had the bye week. But when they played, I think some people forget how good the Browns have looked, especially their defense, second in points per game, first in yards per game. I mean, they really have been playing well. Their run game, especially with Chubb, is unstoppable. We don't know if he's coming back, but even Jerome Ford looked pretty good when he came back. They could see Kareem Hunt getting utilized in there too. Once Deshaun Watson is back, the team looks a lot more well-rounded with him in the game. David Njoku, you got Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore. So there's a lot of talent over there. And again, I think you could definitely make a case to move the Browns back to like 11, 12, 13. If that's what you think, that's fine. Comment down below that you think I'm wrong about the Browns. I honestly kind of think I'm a little wrong, but it seemed more right to just leave them where I had them for a bye week. But I do understand that I could move them back. Moving up to the 8th position, I left the Baltimore Ravens where they were at 2 because I was like, I can't move them past the Browns. I can't move them past the Jaguars. They got a stupid loss against the Steelers, but I don't think they're done by any means. I don't think we should worry about the Ravens not making the playoffs. The stats don't lie. Defense is second in points per game, second in yards per game, which is phenomenal, as well as their offense is top half, 13th in yards per game, 17th in points per game. A lot of that is last week, only scoring the 10 points. I still think their offense is electric. Just had some struggles, some turnovers. So I couldn't discredit them by moving them out of the top 10, which is what I would have needed to do. I guess you could argue I could have put the Jags up, but are we really going to overreact and put the Jaguars ahead of the Browns and the Ravens? I don't think so. So Ravens end up at 8, staying at 8 even with the loss. Dallas Cowboys, who I think I could have even moved back more. I've been saying this whole year that I think there's going to be a game where there's an eye-opener for their team, where you finally find out that their offense isn't very good. Because although statistically their offenses looked pretty good, I don't believe in Dak Prescott. I think that their team has had a lot of easy opportunities on offense with how well the defense has played and with how their defense has forced turnovers and good field position for the offense. And sometimes the best offense is good defense. And that's kind of what the Cowboys were living by. And because of that, I moved them back. Again, tempted to move them back farther, but their defense is very good. Dallas Cowboys end up moving back 1 spot to 7, whereas the Detroit Lions move up a spot. They had to move up. Massive win over the Panthers. Again, it's just the Panthers who, again, I ranked last in the league, but at 4-1, I feel like they have to be close to that top 5 conversation with how well they've been playing. Their defense is still allowing a lot of points. So you see the one stat that, everything's, 6, 6, 4, but then you have 15 in points per game. Their defense is allowing a lot of points still. If they can just figure that out, they're very easily going to be a top 5 team, though. So Detroit ends up making it to 6 at 4-1. Buffalo Bills, I moved back 3 spots. It was tough to do this, but with how some of the teams won games, how the Bills lost, being to the Jaguars, I felt they deserved to move back a little bit, and I couldn't really slot them in between the other teams where I would have had to keep somebody in one spot even after winning a game. Could have probably done that with this next team here, but offense at third in points per game, fourth in yards per game, fifth in points per game on defense. It seemed wrong to move them out of the top 5, so they end up here moving back 3 spots to number 5. Then we got the Kansas City Chiefs. Ended up using the same pictures for this one because I still feel like the Kansas City Chiefs are all about Taylor Swift. They get the close win over the Vikings, which wasn't very impressive to me. That's the only reason they move up is really because they got the win. I think you could definitely argue that they just would have stayed at 5 and then the Bills move back to 4, and that probably would have been fine. You kind of have to think too, well, what if the Bills played the Chiefs? Who would we think wins? I think it could be a close game. And then you look at the numbers too. We go back, the Bills I mentioned, I have them at 5 and they have 3, 4, 5, and 12. And then the Chiefs have 9, 7, 5, and 9 being ranked 4th. Doesn't really seem to line up. I don't base my rankings only on those stats off to the side. I just think those are valuable rankings to kind of show where they're at in the league in points per game and yards per game, which I think are 2 important stats. I can't put every stat on the screen, but I think those were the most important that I could find that I can put for every team that can help justify my opinions. Chiefs move up to number 4. Dolphins also move up, another team where I think you could have debated that they don't move back or don't move up because they just beat the Giants, and that was a 1-score game, closer to halftime, I believe, with the Dolphins and the Giants, which it never should have been. This should have been another, drop 50, 60 points, especially with how the Giants have been playing, turning the ball over on offense and just not being able to produce offensive drives. I would have expected more than 31 points out of the Dolphins, which is crazy to say because they've been scoring so much. But you got A-Chain down there. Unfortunately, he's going to be injured. Had to put him on the image here, though, with how well he's been playing. Dolphins moved to 4-1, and they moved to 3 on my list. The other thing, I guess, is kind of notable is first in points per game and yards per game. Towards the end, though, in defense, I think to be a true contender and to make a playoff run or anything, they're going to have to figure that out because I think they're an injury away from having a tougher time on offense. Right now you have Waddle and Hill, where if one's out, you can still work on the other, and you could be okay. But if you just lost Achane and you still have Mostert, but I think with just Mostert, you might not be as good. You're going to get Jeff Wilson back, but I don't know how that's all going to work. So I think the Dolphins are going to have to stay healthy to be a contender, but they end up at 3 at 4-1. The Eagles, I think they're a little overrated. I know they're 5-0, but the games they've been winning have been way too close. I put them at 2, and you notice the stats again: 5th, 2nd, 13th, and 10th. Their defense is kind of underwhelming at this point. Offense is still playing well, but it's really just slowly driving down the field, couple tush pushes, and they're just outscoring the other teams. Defense is still playing well, of course, but I think underwhelming for, they were one of the best in the league last year, and now they're kind of, barely top 10, maybe even just top half. So Eagles still end up at 2nd, mainly because they're 5-0. They're absolutely not better than the next team. And being 5-0, I think they deserve to be there. The last team is the San Francisco 49ers. It's just hard to argue it. They are an absolute juggernaut in the league right now. They don't name the holes. Where is the holes? Maybe cornerbacks aren't amazing. I don't even know if you can say it's a hole because of how good their linebackers, their defensive line, and their safeties are. So, when you have all those other positions on defense that are that good, cornerbacks don't need to be top tier, and then their offensive line is great. Christian McCaffrey is great. Even their backup running backs showed out when they came in this week. Brock Purdy's been slinging it. All their receivers, George Kittle, that's just the most well-rounded team. Absolute juggernaut. Very well deserving of the first spot. And here's the whole list here we got coming. So we got, back to the thumbnail. This is the whole list right here. So biggest movers, again, we have the Patriots moved back 4. We have the Bears moved up 4. I think it was really what solidified that for me was the Patriots Losing the 2 games in a row, it happens once and you think it's kind of a fluke. Happens twice and you go, whoa, okay, wait a minute. Same thing with the Bears. They got the loss last week, but they started to look really good on offense. They looked really good on offense and this week and were able to hold out for it. So those are the biggest movers. 49ers absolutely deserve to stay up front. My top 10 is very debatable. I think you could easily slot the Jaguars in there, move out the Browns. You could move down the Cowboys, maybe move up the Ravens even a little bit. You could move the Buccaneers up if you want to. I think they're overrated. Same with my bottom 4. Broncos could be moved back because of how rough they've been. I just think they've been in kind of closer games, so I thought they deserved it. Panthers have actually been putting up a good fighting chance, so it seems wrong to put them behind the Giants and even maybe the Patriots just with recency bias. But that's it, guys. That's my Week 6 power rankings. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and have a great day.